Thank you, Samir and Bhaskar. Hello, everyone. AI has been used to generate a variety of content: pictures, videos, code, and even models. And we've also seen this being used to generate text. It was really ChatGPT going public sometime last year that created a storm of attention in this space. Natural language processing, understanding human language, and generating text has shot into the limelight. In this session, we'll look at generative AI for natural language processing. A few months ago, there was an innovative cosmetics company that launched a very bold advertising campaign. And this caught everyone by surprise. What did they do? They created a new face for their brand using generative AI. They called it Alva. And it was not just another digital model, it was a new face wherein it was a representation drawn from tens of millions of points. Their customers globally, they drew the data points from the customers' styles, preferences, and they created this online digital face. And it was beyond that, it also interacted with the consumers through the website, and it started making recommendations. So Alva, so she became very popular. We can call the AI that. What was the result like? Over 40% improvement in customer engagement, 25% increase in sales, and importantly, over 60% increase in brand mentions. So the leadership was thrilled with this because Alba was not just selling cosmetics, but telling a compelling brand story. That is the power of generative AI. And by the way, this introduction was generated by ChatGPT. I was fascinated with this example and I asked for links and details about this case study to read further about it. And then ChatGPT apologized, saying, sorry, this was not a real world example. I wanted to make your talk interesting, so I created this fictional example. And I kid you not. So it was a big letdown, but this also highlights the challenges with generative AI. It has great potential. At the same time, there are risks and challenges. And that's what this session will cover. What is the market potential of generative AI? What are some real world applications we can look at quickly? What are the risks and challenges we should be aware of? And how do you operationalize this? What are some practical tips? So, thanks to generative AI, natural language processing, and text analytics broadly is poised for huge growth. There was a survey which found that about $110 billion is the estimated global market size by the end of this decade. And generative AI during that period is going to be growing at a compounded rate of about 32%. And for organizations, just one metric, about 30% of their outbound marketing messages are likely to be synthetic with tools like generative AI. And this is going to happen in the next 2 years. That's a big jump from the 2% today. What are some areas that generative AI can be used or is already being used? Before I get into this, a note of caution: generative AI is the latest cool toy in the town. And we'll have to watch out from not rushing into creating cases just to use generative AI. Ultimately, all of these are means to an end to solve an organizational challenge. We'll have to start with that and find out whether we need simpler analytics or do we really need generative AI. And if generative AI qualifies that condition, then so be it. Here are some examples. It is a perfect fit for customer service to unleash intelligent chatbots that can engage customers, quite like Alva, but in real life. Clinical documentation in pharma space, it can be used to simplify electronic health records for physicians. and it can help assess credit scores and explain the decision of algorithms to the consumers. And it can be used for sentiment analysis across a wide variety of verticals to understand human emotions. We'll go through each of these very quickly. Customer service. Today, would any of us like interacting with a chatbot? At least I wouldn't. I really wait for finding a way to interact with humans. But generative AI is set to change that. The last 6+ months since ChatGPT came on board, I have been using it almost every week, and I found it powerful. And if I can take that and extend it to enterprise issue resolution, I would certainly consider that. So that's the potential of generative AI for customer service. And Bank of America has already utilized this, and it's reported that over 1 billion times customers have used it since its launch. In clinical documentation, it's reported that patients spend about 3 to 6 hours every day on either documenting or understanding electronic health records, and that's often frustrating. Generative AI can listen into the conversation of during the appointment and create a summary that can be added to the electronic health record. And similarly, it can extract data from past electronic health records, medical forms, a variety of sources, combine them together, standardize them, and help the physicians or the health professionals. And similarly, it can also simplify the medical jargon for patients across languages. It can be revolutionary. For credit scoring, generative AI can help customers analyze, can help understand customers' preferences, their past records from bank statements, a variety of statements which reflect the credit worthiness, and then help the bank employees or financial organizational stakeholders make informed decisions by simplifying the model results and help them make those decisions of whether to approve a loan or not, for example. And it can also help loan applicants tell if their applications were rejected, why they were denied. Look at this quick example from a research paper. Rather than just saying that, sorry, your loan has been denied, wouldn't it be powerful if you say that it was denied because the income listed on the application is not high enough? Or, for instance, the applicant has only been employed at the current employer for a certain duration, and hence you fall short of the criteria. This can be very revealing, and this can help with the explanatory AI, explainable AI. So that's a great use. And finally, sentiment analysis, understanding human emotions, whether it is your customers, employees, or any other internal stakeholders. Today, we have machine learning models, which are a big improvement from the bag of words techniques. Generative AI can take it even further. How can it help with sentiment analysis? If we get into the nuts and bolts of sentiment analysis, it can help with pre-processing the data, with feature extraction, make it even more accurate, extracting the entities and features. It can help you understand the context, which has been a challenge for algorithms so far. It can also help you generate new training data where you don't have enough training data available. And it can help you classify the sentiment into a much more fine-grained buckets, not just positive or negative. And it can support across languages and do this all real time. So given all of these fabulous use cases, these are areas where you could get started right away. But what are the challenges and risks you have to watch out for? Quite like the story at the starting, to avoid this becoming a letdown. First, copyright issues. Today, there have been every other week, we've been hearing lawsuits being taken up by companies that are spooked by generative AI. For instance, Getty Images has sued Stable Diffusion for illegally using their images and training the models of their images and launching their service. And similarly, there are several artists who have sued other generative AI companies for recording music by training the models on their historical pieces. And they claim that the new generated music is not sufficiently different. It's just a derivative piece. And hence they say that there's a copyright violation. So all of these are issues. There's no clear regulation yet. Number two, the models are not perfect. ChatGPT often makes up facts, it lies. And that's something which OpenAI and organizations that make such models have been fixing. So we will soon get there to in terms of slightly more reliable models. But until then, we'll also have to watch out for imperfect, inaccurate models. And finally, the issue of bias is a thorny one with AI, with generative AI creating content at scale, unimaginable scale, and it accessing all kinds of format and bringing it all together. There's a very high risk that it could amplify all of this bias. So that is a risk we all need to watch out for. And these are three big callouts when leaders are looking at employing generative AI within the organizations. Typically, the legal teams are the first ones who get worried because they need to take care of all of these, understandably. But these are things that we need to think about and see how we can get over. And finally, if you're thinking about operationalizing generative AI at your organization, how can you go about it? This is a question I often get when I'm advising clients on coming up with an AI roadmap, or when I'm running trainings on generative AI. The question is, how can we do this immediately? There are three options I recommend clients. So we will look at the options in the level of increasing complexity left to right, and at the same time, better flexibility as you go up in complexity. Firstly, option one is to enable generative AI in tools that you already use. For example, if you're using HubSpot or Salesforce for CRM, both of these organizations have launched their versions of generative AI within the tools. ChatSpot from HubSpot and Einstein GPT from Salesforce. And similarly, all other big organizations like Microsoft has Office and GitHub Copilot, Google Business similarly has. So look at these as first options to enable. Either they're already available within your subscription, or you might just take a higher subscription and then use that. It only calls for user training. That's important, but that is relatively faster. Option two is where you need to buy generative AI tools off the shelf beyond what you already use. Here are some options. It calls for technical integration with the rest of your tool set. And finally, option three is where you need to build. When these two options are not available, you need to build them. And that's where you need to look at open models of frameworks available so that you can accelerate this path. It might take months and need software development, but there are useful frameworks like LangChain, which specifically has come up to make the large language models build easier. So these are options that you should consider. And as I wrap up, note of caution again: when you're looking at solving business challenges, start with simpler analytics, descriptive diagnostic analytics, and simpler machine learning models. If none of those work, then look at whether generative AI can solve the problem, and only then use that. Otherwise, generative AI will be just a distraction. So watch out for that. Hope you found this session useful. Thank you. I am active on LinkedIn. Look forward to continuing the conversation. If you'd like a more detailed session on AI, application of AI in the business, do reach out to me. Thank you.
Thank you, Ganesh, for a crisp but very, very pertinent session, demystifying talk, GAI for NLP. One thing I liked about what Ganesh said, the best about this session, chatbot actually apologizes. Bhaskar, we have not seen human do that apology very often. What's your take about the session?
Yeah, excellent session. I think kudos to Ganesh for actually maintaining his energy given the time frame that he's in right now. But the session overall, right? Coming back to that, I think the key part for me was the operationalizing aspects that he finished it off with. The three use cases. How do you think about the buy versus build? Versus even in the build, how does your internal org need to align to adoption of the use cases that you're thinking about? I think that is a very crucial element that not a lot of people are thinking about or even talking about. That's one. Second, as he rightly spoke about, probably was the bias aspects, and when the bias gets amplified and the machine starts hallucinating, although he didn't use the term, but that's a key thing that we all need to watch out for, because all of these systems today are very confident in what they are telling us. And how do we watch out for when we go with the system and when the human in the loop becomes important? I think is a crucial element that Ganesh kind of spoke about. So that I think is the two key takeaways for me, Samir, as I looked at it. One, looking out for bias, and second, how do you operationalize and the whole buy versus build question for organizations?